Robert Jenrick is not holding back, folks. In a blistering takedown, the former immigration minister has accused Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer of outright betraying his election promises. And trust me, this one's got everyone talking. From broken manifesto pledges to a heartless betrayal of the WASPI women, Jenrick's words cut deep. But don't just take my word for it. Check out this shocking clip where Jenrick lays it all bare.
Previously say that they will back the WASPI women and essentially give them what they want. And then last night it emerged that that wouldn't happen. How do you feel about that? Because the Tories didn't give them what they wanted either, did they?
Look, you can argue the merits of the case, and I think they are arguable. You can make the argument, as you just have, and I think actually it's the right one, that there just isn't the billions and billions available to provide the kind of compensation that these women would wish. But the big issue to me beyond that is the dishonesty. The fact that some politicians were willing to explain the trade-offs, be honest with the public that this isn't possible, but yet pretty much everyone in the cabinet, including Keir Starmer, when they were in opposition, were having their photo taken with WASPI women, were tweeting, were going to rallies, were saying that they were going to fix this, that they were going to sort out this great injustice. Now they're in government, they've done precisely the opposite. And it's also a pattern with Keir Starmer. You know, this is a man who got elected as Labour leader on a set of promises, reneged on almost all of them.
Robert Jenrick's scathing remarks on GB News have sparked a firestorm, reigniting a national conversation about broken promises and abandoned voters. His blistering criticism of Keir Starmer's leadership centred on Labour's decision to refuse compensation to the WASPI women, a move that has sent shockwaves through the political landscape. The WASPI women, those born in the 1950s who had their state pension age abruptly increased, have been fighting for justice for years. Their campaign gained significant traction under the Conservative government, which they accused of ignoring their plight. But what stings even more now is the sense of betrayal by Labour, particularly Keir Starmer, who once stood as an outspoken advocate for their cause. Back in July 2022, Starmer expressed strong support for the WASPI campaign, declaring the changes to the pension age a real injustice. He passionately criticised the Conservative government, saying they were putting their fingers in their ears and ignoring the suffering of these women. It was a moment that gave the WASPI women hope, a belief that a future Labour government would finally deliver the compensation they deserved. But fast forward to this week, and that hope has been dashed. Liz Kendall, Labour's Work and Pensions Secretary, announced on Sunday that there would be no compensation scheme for the WASPI women. This decision came despite the findings of the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman, which had recommended payouts ranging from £1,000 to nearly £3,000 per woman. The outcry was immediate and fierce. Angela Madden, chair of the WASPI campaign, minced no words in her response, calling the decision bizarre and totally unjustified. She directly challenged Starmer's justification, particularly his claim that 90% of affected women were aware of the pension age changes in advance. Madden accused Labour of cherry-picking data and pointed to evidence from the Ombudsman showing that 60% of women were completely unaware of the changes until it was too late. For the WASPI women, this isn't just a policy disappointment, it's personal. Many of them have shared heart-wrenching stories of how the sudden changes derailed their retirement plans, forcing them to work longer and depleting their savings. And now, with Labour shutting the door on compensation, they feel more betrayed than ever. The outrage spilled into Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday, where Labour MP Diane Abbott confronted Starmer directly. Her question was pointed. Did he understand just how deeply let down the WASPI women feel? Starmer's response, a carefully worded acknowledgement of their concerns, fell flat. He cited the high cost of compensation as the primary reason for Labour's decision, claiming the taxpayer simply couldn't bear the financial burden. But this explanation didn't satisfy his critics. Robert Jenrick seized on the moment to deliver a scathing rebuke, accusing Starmer of making a habit of breaking promises. He described Labour's approach as telling lies at every turn, and argued that the party had abandoned its moral responsibility to the very people who trusted them. Jenrick's words echoed the sentiments of many who now see Labour's decision as a betrayal of working-class voters. The WASPI debacle isn't the only scandal dogging Labour this week. Another storm is brewing over the party's cuts to the winter fuel payment, a move that has left pensioners across the UK struggling to heat their homes. Philanthropist Ali Rehman Malik has stepped in to fill the gap, launching the Winter Fuel Support Campaign to help elderly residents in some of the country's most deprived areas. Malik's campaign, which provides financial assistance to pensioners in places like Blackpool and Burnley, is a damning indictment of Labour's policy. Speaking to GB News, Malik described heartbreaking stories of elderly individuals forced to choose between heating and eating. He recounted one case of an elderly man who had lost 8 stone over 2 years because he couldn't afford food or heating. Malik warned that the cuts would put additional strain on the NHS, as elderly patients struggle to recover in freezing homes. Labour's leadership is under intense scrutiny, with critics accusing the party of abandoning its core principles. The WASPI betrayal and the winter fuel payment cuts have become rallying cries for those who believe Labour has lost its way under Starmer. The anger isn't limited to voters either. Feminist activists are also up in arms over Labour's latest guidance on single-sex spaces. This guidance, which has been slammed as legally illiterate by activists like Helen Joyce, has reignited the debate over women's rights and gender identity. Critics argue that the document misrepresents the Equality Act and undermines the legal protections for biological women in single-sex spaces. Maya Forstater of the campaign group Sex Matters called it a lazy kick in the teeth to women and accused Labour of breaking yet another election promise. These scandals paint a grim picture of a party struggling to manage multiple crises at once. For many, Keir Starmer's leadership has come to symbolise a pattern of broken promises and political expediency. His earlier support for the WASPI women, his commitment to protecting single-sex spaces, and his pledges to support the most vulnerable have all come under question. The public reaction has been swift and unforgiving. Social media is flooded with posts from outraged voters, many of whom feel that Labour has abandoned the very people it claims to represent. Hashtags like Labour betrayal and WASPI justice are trending as campaigners call for greater accountability from Starmer and his team. Meanwhile, the WASPI women aren't giving up without a fight. Angela Madden and her fellow campaigners are doubling down on their efforts, vowing to hold Labour to account for their broken promises. They've launched a renewed push for justice, rallying support from MPs, activists, and the public. And let's not forget the looming general election. With scandals like these dominating the headlines, Labour risks alienating key voter groups at a critical time. The WASPI women, the elderly, and women's rights activists are all demographics that could swing the vote, and their anger could spell trouble for Starmer's chances of becoming Prime Minister. As the dust settles on this week's political drama, one thing is clear. The road ahead for Keir Starmer and Labour is fraught with challenges. Whether they can rebuild trust and repair the damage remains to be seen. But for now, the WASPI betrayal and the winter fuel payment cuts are scandals they won't be able to shake anytime soon. If you're as shocked by this as we are, hit that subscribe button and give us a like. There's so much more to uncover as this scandal unfolds, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Stay tuned, because the twists and turns just keep coming.